Hi, I'm Garth McKenzie from traderscorner.co.za, and this week we're taking a look at the US dollar index and the price of Brent crude oil. Both have made interesting technical developments over the last week, and they're quite topical at this point. So let's take a look at each of those, and we start with a chart of the US dollar index. This time I'm really zooming out very far. I'm looking at a monthly chart of the US dollar index, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of this millennium, so around about 20 years worth of trading history here for the US dollar index. Now keep in mind, this is an index that tracks the US dollar against 6 other developed market currencies. And it's a good measure of the strength of the dollar against other developed market currencies. Now, what's interesting to note is that the index has been quite weak over the last year. We saw it spike up in right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic last year. But ever since then, since the Fed has been adopting ultra easy monetary policy, we've seen the US dollar weakening over the last year. And what's interesting is that it's traded all the way down to a significant technical level, which is down at 88. You can see how that has been a significant swing high and swing low over the last decade or so. It didn't quite get to 88 on this recent pullback, but it got close, and it does appear as if the US dollar is finding support around that lateral support area that has been significant over the last decade. And on the monthly candle, it does appear to be a reversal candle up at this point, and we need to see if that follows through in the months ahead. But certainly interesting to note that the US dollar weakness does appear to be finding some buying interests down at that sort of area. If we then zoom in a little closer, we take a look at the weekly chart of the US dollar index, and this is only looking back over the last 5 years now. What's interesting to note is that there's some similarities right now in mid-2021 to what we saw in the early part of 2018. So we're starting to see that US dollar index breaking up above a downtrend resistance line. But also what's interesting to note there is that there seems to be a double bottom pattern which is formed at around about 89.5 on the US dollar index. Now, that double bottom would only be validated on a move above 93, and that would then open further gains for the dollar. But I think it is interesting to note that there's that possible double bottom pattern evident there, and also note that the downtrend has been broken. And also the fact that this has come about at a time now where the US the Fed is potentially going to be looking at raising interest rates out in 2023 and possibly tapering asset purchases. So it is interesting to note that the dollar seems to be reacting to all of that. Then next up, let's take a look at the chart of Brent crude oil. We're starting here also with a long-term chart, looking at a monthly chart going back all the way to 2006. And what you can see there is that there's significant downtrend resistance evident that's been in place for the last 15 or 16 years there, and we're pushing up up towards the top of that resistance line now. Comes in at around about $80 on the price of Brent crude oil, so we need to keep an eye on that in the near term to see whether that area of resistance is able to be overcome or whether it actually brings in some selling activity again. And then lastly, let's just have a look at the weekly chart of Brent crude oil. So this is looking at a little bit more shorter term. When I say short term, we're only looking at 3 or 4 years here. But why I bring up this chart is the fact that the break above $70 per barrel here is very significant. It takes the oil price up to a 3-year high, and the break above 70 opens potential for a move up to about $85 per barrel. So whilst above $70 per barrel, I think we've got to give the buyers the upside or the benefit of the doubt here. And any dips down towards $70 per barrel probably look to be buying opportunities on the price of Brent crude oil. That's all I've got for you this week. I'll be back again next week with another look at some interesting analysis on various different markets.